All right, there we go.
There we go.
All right, Clint from the Doorway too, hanging out with James from Burial in the Sky. Very appreciative you doing this, man. Digging your new record a whole lot. Kind of dug in and listened to the other two records as well too, so we can have a pretty good conversation about everything.
Awesome.
Um, so the first thing I kind of want to talk about is, uh, does it get tiresome to have this Rivers of Nihil comparison all the goddamn time? Because I can understand why people talk about it, but it's very two different bands.
I appreciate that you that's how you feel. I think we all agree in the band. I think anyone would hope that if someone's saying, "Oh, they sound like this band," or you make a comparison with any band, that you sound different than them, whoever it is. It could be what you consider the best band in the world. But if someone's consistently saying, "Well, you sound like this band," you kind of want to go, "But do we sound like anything else? Like, do we sound?" But as far as Rivers goes, we love those guys. They're buddies of ours. Zach did sax in the last two records now with the work coming out September 24th, I think it is.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we love those dudes. So if someone's going to say, hey, this is Rivers of Nile, I think the approach and the overall style is pretty different, but it doesn't offend us in any way. It doesn't get us
Okay.
so it doesn't annoy me, but yeah, absolutely. And it's going to make that connection. We have Zach on sax. So people hear saxophone and they're going to go, because Zach is right now the sax guy.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, sax guy from this band. So it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Cool.
And if anything, we just appreciate that people like it and dig it and are going, oh, hey, we love this band. Maybe we'll like this band too. And even if they come to us and go, well, this sounds nothing like Rivers, or this reminds me of Rivers, and either one gets them listening to us, we're happy.
Nice. Yeah, I was just wondering because I see endless comparisons, and it's just I can hear the similarities, but there's so much difference. But okay, cool.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start off with just the three records, the full lengths that we can talk about a bit.
Cool.
So I want to start with Persistence, of course, because that's from 2016.
Yeah.
I think there's a common on all of them. I've read some reviews. I've read some things that like people say the first two records are very different than the new one, but I don't think they are. So I kind of want to talk about the common themes. First of all, I feel like there's a sci-fi element. I feel like there's a tech death element. I feel like there's a jazzy element and a very progressive element on all three of the records. So I kind of wanted to ask you, when you guys were working on Persistent of Thought, did you always think that you were going to kind of mix that kind of tech death sci-fi element with a jazzy proggy kind of vibe?
So I'm the only one left from that time frame. But as far as that goes, when it comes to Persistence of Thought, yeah, absolutely. So back then, that was also the thing too. Back then was like sci-fi, alien.
Yeah.
Like that was everybody. Everybody was writing about that, and everyone was obsessed with that. And yeah, we definitely followed suit with that, because everything that we were looking up to as far as bands were back then, as far as the metal bands that were like that, like doing that stuff back then, that's like obviously what kind of like those influences poured out of me, and at the time a guy named Willow Crongless, who co-wrote that record with me. And I would say that we always wanted to be like, or I always wanted to be like a more tech death version of like BT Bam.
I got you.
When I was younger, like that was pretty much all I wanted. So I think what it was I didn't know how to accomplish that. So I was trying to figure out for a while with that record specifically, with Persistence. I was like, how do I do that? I'm not talented enough yet to accomplish that. at all. I'm still not talented enough to accomplish that.
Oh.
But how do I get close? And that's what I think persistence is, to a certain degree, without, I mean, obviously there was my own like influence of things. I was a huge fan of like Necrophagist and like Decrepit Birth and a bunch of bands that were like more like straight up like tech death bands. But like that, yeah, that whole element of like sci-fi and that style of like more atmospheric stuff. I also love things like explosions in the sky and stuff, which I think you hear more of on the first two records. So those elements all kind of blended. And I also wanted to be tech death Pink Floyd. That was like my
Gotcha.
that was my big feature. I was like, how do I make Pink Floyd tech death? And I could never figure it out.
No, that's cool. So it's funny that you said explosion in the sky, because I was gonna say that there's a very kind of post-rock element to your early stuff. So that was kind of the next thing I was gonna talk about. And you brought up Necrophagist too, where I was gonna say your early stuff has a very, very kind of that tech death style, almost over the top tech death style.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's cool. So I'm not deaf when I heard those things. So that's awesome.
You absolutely picked out me ripping
cool.
off multiple bands.
Nah, but it works well. And then the other thing I kind of wanted to talk about was as we move along, I'm gonna say the prog rock and the more kind of jazzy elements become more commonplace, but they're not overdone. So I want to talk about the next record as well, Credo. And this is where I kind of feel that you came into your own. And the reason why I say that is you start the record with a goddamn jazz song. Okay. Like let's be honest. Okay. It is a completely reminding me of like Atheist and Pestilence and stuff like that. Like, like where I can now hear the jazzy tech death, like the jazzy prog death stuff going on here. So can we talk about how you went from Persistence to Credo, and there's a big change in sound, not so much dynamic, but in sound.
Yeah, there was a huge change with Creatio, because I feel like Creatio was a learning experience more than it was a record that I would look back on and go, I love that record. Because if I'm being perfectly honest, there were things about that record that I would love to have done differently, and there's things about that record that I love about it. That's what makes that record kind of cool. There were things that were out of our control. It was written in a very turbulent time in the band. A lot of things were shifting. A lot of gears were shifting. Zach and Sam were coming into the becoming more part of the mix, and are now just an integral part of this band's sound. And you kind of sense almost like a half shift in the direction of where the band was going, but we didn't get into full gear yet. Like you can tell that like we were trying to do something, but we just couldn't get it all the way up. We couldn't seem to, we were stalling. The car kept stalling rather than we kept popping the clutch. So, but it was a learning experience, and I feel like that was what was so much important. And when we got done and we released Creatio, we went, this record's cool. People would come up to us though, and they would go, "Wow, you guys sound a lot better live than you do on the record." And we were like, that sounds so cool. And then eventually that thing started to kind of grate us. And we were like, wait a minute, shouldn't your best performances be on the record rather than on?
Sure.
Yeah. Like we were like, we really need to focus on what is it that makes people come back to records. And it's not just songwriting, and it's not just the interesting like ethereal stuff or whatever sets you apart from the mix. It's also like being listenable. So I feel like Creatio was, like I said, a learning experience in the sense that the production is something that we needed to pull and learn from, with the way it ended up being, about timelines, about a lot of stuff that I think as a band we grew from because of Growing Pains. That Curatio, in my opinion, is a growing pain in the best way. And there's songs that we genuinely love on that record. So it's not at all bashing the record. It's more so that I feel like that record to us is more so, like I said, it's like a learning experience. It was a learning experience and a huge step to start our growth.
Cool. So I was going to say the same thing, which is kind of cool, that it kind of becomes a blended, wonderful mess at times, that record, where you can hear all the elements that you want to be, but you haven't become that yet.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So I kind of wanted to ask, that's the first time you started adding, in my opinion, some truly kind of classical arrangements in as well too, where it's not just tech death and jazz and kind of proggy elements. So I kind of want to move on to the next record, which is a new one, the Consumed Self. And this, to me, kind of, it almost feels like you guys knew exactly what you wanted. Where it feels like you mix the elements of all the tech death stuff, all the proggy stuff that you wanted, the more classical and jazz, but you also added a melody and a texture to it that wasn't on the last record in any way, shape, or form. So can you kind of talk about the brand new record and the thought process of bringing it out? Because I'm going to say, and this is just me saying thank you for it, it's a much more mellow record in a very good way. Where I think the first two records were just in your face all the time. This one gives you moments to breathe. So when you hear those brutal moments, they're so much more brutal.
Thank you. I appreciate it. That's a very, 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 I mean, that displays a lot of the things we would want. We would want people to have a bit more of a ride of emotion rather than like a straightforward punch. We wouldn't be going for the sound that we're going for if that wasn't the case. So it's cool that you pick up on that. So to say that it was a conscious effort to make the record sound the way that it sounds is an understatement, because it was like, so when Curatio came out, like I said, it was a learning experience to say the least. We went into the Consumed Self almost immediately. We started like throwing ideas around because we were like, this happened in a way we didn't want it to happen. So now we're going to do something that is just exponentially different in the way that we approach writing and recording a record. And in doing so, we wrote Curatio, we wrote the Consumed Self, and we ended up, I feel as though like approaching it in a way that was a lot more organic. All of the members gave a lot of themselves toward the sound rather than just it being in the majority in one person's playing field. And everybody, in doing that, it became a picture of the band right now. Like, so by us all giving that, so a person, like, a person has the skeletons of a song, they go, look at this, and we go, oh, that's cool, let's try this out of here and throw this in there, or maybe let's change this part, or make that go a little bit longer, or add this, or add that, and then just like jamming those songs together in live settings for a long time before we hit a studio. And it ended up, and then also just getting the right people to work with on this record was a huge part. We were like, because we wanted that. We were like, we want that sound that is as real as we can make it, but also like you that mix is just like, there's a combination of finding organics and also finding like, what is in this scene, which is like those intense parts they need to hit like dead on, like almost computer perfect. So like with the kind of genre, so like some of those things, like you really don't have a choice with having that, but with a lot of our music we have a lot of jammy dynamics, so we needed like producers and engineers that really understood that and knew how to make that happen, and people like AJ from Hath and Cognitive, who did the drums and the auxiliary percussion with Sam, Grant and Carson from Atrium, who have worked with Rivers and Black Crown,
Yeah,
Burns Red, and all those pretty much any band that's in Pennsylvania that is awesome. It's not all of them, but a lot of them have gone through these guys' doors, and there's a reason why, you know. So we were like, well, you know, we reached out, and in all reality, I was like, there's no way we're gonna be able to work with these guys. There's absolutely no way, and they were incredible, absolutely incredible.
Nice. Yeah, and that's what I was going to kind of ask about is you literally on this record have a brass section and a string section, like as guest members. When this came about, did you know specific songs needed specific pieces, or when you brought these guest musicians in, did you just say, hey, we're going to give you this record, you tell us if there's pieces that you feel that would fit well?
We actually had it completely planned out that it would, that
Nice.
those parts were in there. Yeah. And Sam is so incredibly talented. Like to give him credit where credit's due. When it came to that stuff, when it came to like the composition of like what each instrument play, completely Sam. Like we talk about ideas or like melodies, like basing like the melody on Mountains 1, where like the guitar comes in and just before those big arpeggio section, those and the horns and everything start like swelling in, you know, that melody was already there, but Sam took that and then was like, here we go, these are this kind of these are what I want each instrument to do with that. Or that section I gave him what came into it and what came out of it, and then Sam built that composition to go between those two melodies and work its way through. And all those musicians they went to school with in Westchester. Sam and Zach both went to Westchester together, and so all those musicians they're friends with. And they were like, hey, you want to play on a death metal record? And they were like, okay. And they just gave them sheet music, and then Sam literally recorded every single one of those musicians one at a time live.
Nice. That's very cool. So I want to go back for a second on what you said, because I feel like I hear the same thing and I kind of want to talk a bit about it. So I want to talk about the actual, you were brave enough to try different things. And I almost feel like it's when Opeth became really good, or Dan Swano's stuff became really good, where he wasn't afraid to try new and different things. Like, I love the way the clean and death vocals are arranged on this record. It's a very kind of give and take kind of thing. And you got to be brave to be able to have very melodic, clean vocals on a record like this. So yeah, I'm gonna say you gotta be, because you don't know what's gonna happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you literally, it could become a fucking nightmare. We've heard it 100 times before. And then the other thing I want to talk about was literally the acoustic guitars, the electric guitars, the semi-distorted instruments that are going on. Like, it all just kind of paints this giant textural tapestry. And I kind of wanted to ask, when you were going through all this and you heard it for the first time, were you like, oh no, we got to try this again because this is not right? Or did it feel right from the beginning?
So you mean the, like, how, like, layering that stuff? Like, how,
yes.
Like, okay. All right. Yeah. No. So, when that stuff comes in specifically, because I do a lot of the synth stuff, I do a lot the guitar work as far as like leads and stuff like that, slide and all that kind of stuff, mandolin, the acoustic guitars, the 12 string, like all that kind of stuff. That's like my bread and butter. I love that. Like, I love sitting down once I have the full idea of the song and really throwing ideas, and I'll do those, and the leads, everything. I'll do those pretty much up until the record is like out of the door. I'll just keep in unless I'm completely satisfied. There was a lead on one of the songs that I retracked the day I was sending the final stems. So, and just because I felt like I re-listened to something and I went, oh no, I don't feel the way that I don't feel that I conveyed the right emotion with that, with the way I played that. So I'm like, I got to play that differently. And I think that's kind of the name of the game. So yeah, I would say that there was a lot of like back and forth. Like, does this work? Does this not work? Because with stuff like that, you can end up making things sound super jumbled when you have a lot going on, when you have too much going on. So, you know, balancing like the synth stuff with certain parts of the guitar and balancing like certain riffs with certain like, you know, textural elements. It really is just, it really is a balancing act. It's finding what works best and doesn't take away from the song. And sometimes that ends up being like, oh, I totally hear this melody in my head over top of this thing. And then you do it and you go, that didn't work at all. That didn't work even a little bit, because it just makes it sound bad. And so like, yeah, definitely a lot of back and forth.
Cool. Yeah, and that's what I was going to kind of talk about for a second as well, too, is that's the brave side I'm talking about, where you can hear that there could be so much more in a part, but I think you guys took some of it away because it works better as a more minimalist piece at that part. And then you bring other elements in and then it becomes much more expressive, expansive that way. So on this record, that's the first time I've heard this. I didn't hear that on the other first two records. The other first two records kind of felt more like they were just a bunch of, and I guess this is kind of short-sighting it, but they were a bunch of songs that you added extra layers on, where these almost feel like they were ideas that became songs.
Yeah. I appreciate that you feel that way. I think so too. I think this album in general is just it's more mature is what it comes down to. It's just more mature as a record. And that's good. That's a good thing.
Cool. Yeah, no, I agree.
You know, so I absolutely agree, and I take no offense to that, because I mean, you want that. I feel in a band too. Like you want to hear them and go, oh, okay, no, this band's figuring it out. You know, I knew I would never. I was never good enough to be like the first record. Like that's the, remember, you know, bands you have bands like that's like their first record's the best. Our first is not the best.
No.
Hey, I'm okay with that.
It's a great growth though, because you can hear it as it comes along, and I think you're at a place now where people are noticing, which is really cool. But I kind of want to talk about a bit of live versus studio. Yeah. So you tell me, how the hell are you going to pull this off on a stage?
So we just played our first couple shows with our pals in Fires in the Distance, who are like melodic doom band from Connecticut. Shout out Fires. But our drummer, and so what it comes down to is really just like Sam is our clock, and we live and die by Sam. He has everything coming into his ears, and we have synth coming out through the PA. We have synthesizer stuff. We have something called a main dirty synth, which we use for our live sound, which is behind the whole record. It's something that I learned about years ago, which I've used more intensely on this record than any of them. It just adds this like ethereal layer deep below the rhythm guitars, the dirty guitars, that you really have to kind of listen to pick up on. And when sometimes you'll hear a gap in sound, you hear like a little bit of like a trail on the sound. You're like, what is that?
Sure.
And that's what that is. And it's something that we incorporate live, which helps create more of that album texture than that you would get. Some of the instruments have to be backed up, obviously, like the auxiliary percussion, the hand percussion and stuff on mountains and stuff like that during like the Santana style part. That's all backtracked and stuff like that. But as far as the rest, it's all us. So it's like Zach will switch between his bass guitar and his sax, because he does both in the band. So we have everything timed so that Zach knows the exact amount of time he has to switch his instruments.
Nice.
We both do vocals together, the cleans, me and Zach. Jarrell handles the dirties. We have Brad on second guitar, and we have Sam literally doing everything he knows. He knows it's on point to a click in his ear, and as long as he keeps us there, everything will match up. So,
Cool.
yeah, how we have to do it.
I can't. Yeah, I can't wait to see it. That's going to be super cool to see. But like I said, I see that you're playing with Myth of I as well too.
Yeah.
Or yeah. Do you feel like? And I guess this is kind of just give me your thoughts on it. Do you feel like you kind of get lumped in with too many of these kind of proggy tech death bands to play with? Because I almost feel like when I go see a bill and it's 7 tech death bands, it's like overkill. Or do you feel like that you want to play with different artists, but what happens is like-minded people always play together?
I think it's not as common in the States to have more mixed bills, which I think are super fun. You want to put me on a bill with a punk band, and I'm going to be into it. I mean that. I genuinely mean that. I like. You could see some tour packages or some festival packages over in the UK where it's like you'll have like Saint Vitus and like Cannibal Corpse.
Yep.
And, like Dio or something. I mean, obviously not anymore, but like you get what I'm saying. Like just like, or you'd be like, what is happening here? But it's dope. It's super cool. But I also love being in the community that I'm in. Specifically the guys, like we're good buddies with the guys in Half. So that's cool to be with them. And they kind of have that like blackened, just
yes,
evil sounding music that just like my neck's gonna snap off by the time we're done playing those shows with those guys. And Myth of I are just stupid good. They're stupid talented people. Super excited to hang out with those guys, and just really like get to know them because we haven't met yet, so it'd be cool to be able to hang out. But I wouldn't say I get tired of it. We play such mixed packages sometimes that I think it's just kind of like, you know, you get lumped in with certain things, but also you don't. Like certain crowds don't really care for our type of music as well. Mm-hmm. So it's like we can end up playing certain types of shows, and there's certain types of, you know, and be with bands that are, you know, relatively nothing like us. And there's people who are just like, I ain't into this band at all. They are so not what I'm about. So, you know, it's good and it's bad. So like, you know, you play a show that you're not normally going to play. You're going to probably get people that would never usually come and see you. And you might just gain some new people. You play a show with a bunch of people a bunch of bands that are like pretty much the same thing that you are, just like dead center, like right where you do what you do, at least to a certain degree. You know, you're going to be playing for people that are there for the right reason. They're going to be there and they're going to be like, you're like, oh, okay. They know what they're here for. And to cater to those crowds is cool too. So they're both great. They're both great in their own way. I wouldn't say I'm tired of either. I love, at this point too, I'll play anywhere. With the way the world has been. Give me anybody. Put me up
I hear you.
Neil Young. Definitely put me up there with Neil Young.
You could put me up with Neil Young anytime you want, man. That sounds good to me too.
That was a bad thing. Like,
yeah, no, that's a good thing.
Please put me up there with Neil Young.
Right? Yeah. You want me to open up for Crazy Horse, man? I'm gonna do it any day of the week. There is no way I'm not doing that. That's awesome. So let's talk about this is the first record that you're working with Rising Nemesis, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
We've been signed.
Yeah. So congratulations on that. But I wanted to say, like, it's kind of an odd pairing because they're a very different label than what you really do.
Yeah.
They have a lot of slam material, like brutal fucking death metal. Like, yeah. So how did you hook up with a label that is just like gutturally brutal slam, and you're a death metal band, but you're the fringe of this?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It was definitely like an odd pairing, and we were like, ooh, this is a bit weird. Let's see how this goes. But they were the ones that cared. They really loved the record, which we appreciated in a time where like the music industry was scary, dude. Like, it was, no one wanted to take any gambles. No one wanted to be able to put any time or effort into anything, no money into anything new, because every label had such a back. I mean, you see it this year. You see how much stuff is coming out. Like, our record was done well before it came out, forever ago. And there's a trillion other bands who are in the same boat, who are all coming out now, and their shit has been done for forever, just waiting and waiting and waiting. And so labels were like, I have a stockpile of stuff that we need to release. Why would we sign anybody? So it's like, and that was the result. That was, obviously, it was difficult, but we got a couple of people that seemed interested and gave us some offers that were cool, but Rising Nemesis at the time definitely gave us like the best and most conducive for what we felt we needed at the time. They were a great start for us with this record. It definitely was us getting our toes wet in the whole signed industry of the world, because we'd never done it, and it felt a little less intense and crazy with them.
Nice. Very cool. Yeah, they seem to really care. They're pushing it. It's getting good press, so it's nice to see a record label care. So that's very nice.
Yeah, our PR guy too is incredible. Mind Eraser PR does such incredible work. If anyone needs PR, that's where they should be going to. If anyone in any mid-tier band, or even up from that, just anybody should be going to Mind Eraser PR, because the work that they put in was magnanimous. It's outlandishly good.
Oh, I agree. He hit me up about you several times, so that was kind of funny. But that's very cool. So I'm gonna kind of turn the tables a little bit for a second, and I kind of want to get your thoughts on something. Sure. So let's say someone is going to be listening to Burial in the Sky for the very, very first time. They have no idea. Literally, all they've seen is album covers. How would you describe the band as someone that's going to listen to it for the very first time?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. I think I would tell them, if they have a background in the style of music, or in the type of music, and they understood that, but they'd never heard us before, I would say that with this record specifically, that we now probably are like trying to hit that Pink Floyd meets Tech Death. So I think that kind of like was what we got out of this record. I've heard it said a lot of times, and I had stopped thinking of that comparison too for a long time. That had not come to my brain, and then it was like 3 or 4 reviews that I read where someone was like, "This is Pink Floyd meets death metal," and I was like, yeah, hey man, I guess I was still trying to do that. I didn't.
Nice.
But yeah, and I would say if you like death metal and you like psychedelic music, like jam music, you'll probably dig us.
Cool. All right, because the way I describe you is a little bit different, but I kind of want to give you my interpretation of it to like people. Yeah, like people when. So I have a dear friend at work. His name's Mike Miller, and he and I are both leaders at our job, and we're the only 2 guys into this kind of music. It's really odd that we're both like are in management and we like listen to crazy black and death metal. But I gave him some songs. I said, you need to listen to this record, because I knew he would dig it, because he loves all this stuff as well too. And I said, just imagine mixing Porcupine Tree and Atheist together. I said, if you mix these 2 bands together, this is exactly what I goddamn hear. And I said, there's moments where I swear to God, you have channeled the inner Steve Wilson, because
you could not give me that.
I'm sorry, what was that?
You could not give me a bigger compliment than Steven Wilson. That's top tier songwriter.
but it reminds me of that on the mellower parts that you're doing. Like you kind of have that Porcupine Tree vibe where they are almost a metal band, but they just pull it back one step. And that's kind of what they've always reminded me of. Like
Yeah,
they
absolutely.
are Opeth without the death vocals. Like I don't
Absolutely.
know how I don't know how
Oh,
else to say it.
absolutely. And Opeth is just like another band that has been a massive influence on me, and I would say the whole band as a whole. Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, so that's just kind of the way I gave it to him, and he listened to it and he goes, "Holy shit, that was spot on!" And now you have two fans instead of one. So that's that's
That's
yeah,
how we replicate. That's how we replicate. I love it.
yeah, no, it's very cool. So I also kind of wanted to ask about the artwork because every one of the records kind of have a common theme, a common element. I mean, they may be different in kind of overall visuals, but they have the same kind of vibe to them. Was that done purposefully as well too?
The first two, absolutely. They were the same artist, and I really wanted them to have like that kind of cohesive nature. I think it, like they absolutely all have like that. You're right. They all have that kind of vibe. Um, Justin, uh, Justin's work on the new one, the Consume Self, it's just stunning. I think it's just something so. I mean, they're all wonderful. Nathan Lee did the last two, Creatio and Persistence, and he did incredible. The only reason we didn't go back to him was because we felt that we wanted people to go, "Hey, this is still Burial in the Sky, but it's different.
Yeah.
It's a little bit different." So we knew Justin could do that. We knew Justin could get that done, and his work on that, I just think it's absolutely beautiful. I would say that, yeah, it still has that theme, but it was more so him matching the story that we had to go along with it.
Cool. Awesome. So the next thing I kind of want to ask, it's just kind of a guilty pleasure for me that I have to ask you because I like the music that you do. Uh, how inspired are you by Voivod? And the reason why I ask this is I swear to God, at certain points in time, you have this same guitar tone as Piggy did in the early days. Like it's almost the same tone.
I love that band. I like they're an incredible band. And I mean, like incredibly influential. Also, in my opinion, like underrated, even though they're well known and well loved in the scene. Like that's I'm not saying that they don't get credit. They do get great credit. I just feel like they should even get even more credit for what they have done and what they do. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't say I was trying to replicate my tone from them, but if it comes across that way, I could see it. I
Okay.
could absolutely see it.
I purposely had to listen to Dimension Hatros again because I knew that I heard similar sounds,
Oh
and
yeah.
you have a very kind of, it's not overly crunchy or overly flanged, but it's like this perfect balance of both, where you give that sci-fi element without being, again, this is me praising, not attacking, like that over cheesy vibe. Like
Oh yeah.
a lot of those death metal bands that use sci-fi elements get so fucking cheesy at times. It just drives me crazy.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing is, with metal in general, it is a cheesy genre. As a whole, it is so cheesy. It's such a corn dog genre, but we love it. So
Yeah,
yeah, it is.
cool. Awesome. So I got a couple more and then I'll let you go. I do appreciate this very much.
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, but the next thing I kind of want to talk about is uh do you feel like you're moving away from a more tech death genre now, or do you feel like you're just blending in those newer elements into what you've already have? Because from Creatio to this record, I feel like there's a divergence happening, and I don't know if it's just natural or it's a thought process of we want to add so many more elements that we can't keep everything old still in the band.
That's that's a good question. That's something that I think I've asked myself is like where is the band going? And when it comes to the music itself, I would say going into it, like I said, there was a lot of growing pains coming up to get this record made. But going into it, I remember going, I had to kind of like go, what was it that made me so excited about music when I listened to it? What was it that like made me go, oh my God, I want to listen to this again and again and again? And I think that's what kind of comes across as more so like us diverging, is the fact that we really focused on like the melody on the record. And it almost feels like a divergence sometimes, because in metal, some bands are famous for the complete lack thereof of melody, which is awesome. And we use that ourselves. But I think our biggest focus was trying to find a way to get people to latch on to stuff. And I think that's the goal. I don't know where that will take us. I don't know. We've been writing stuff still. We started writing relatively quickly. And we're really happy with what is coming out. I wouldn't say that we have a grasp on what we are yet. I would say that we just are going to keep writing the way that we chose to approach this record, I would say, which is like, is it something that I would want to listen to?
Cool. That's a perfect answer. The next thing I was going to ask is there anybody that you want to work with that you haven't worked with yet?
Oh, that's cool. So when we were doing this record, we were about to work with a couple different people, but there was at first we were trying, it just ended up panning out because it just made more sense to go to Carson and Grant. But we were initially talking to the guy who works with Jamie King, and we were talking about doing it with Jamie King, which the only reason that didn't happen was because we just got into it. Just was who got back to us and talked to us first. It really was just that. And Carson and Grant, it just made most sense. Like they're in PA, they knew what we were going for, and they were like just super duper, like I like it, just super duper involved. And now I don't even know if I would ever want to go to anybody, because they're just so good at what they do. It would feel weird to do anything else with anybody. But on a personal level, there's a lot of guys I'd love to work with. But I wouldn't say maybe necessarily with Burial, because I love the group of people that I'm working with. I feel so supremely like lucky to have the group of people that I'm surrounded by. So I wouldn't change any of them for the world.
Cool. Yeah, I think this lineup is gelled in a very, very special way. I don't disagree. Like I hope it stays around for quite some time. So
thanks, man. I appreciate that. Me too.
Yeah. So I guess what I'll say is my final question, and I'll give you a moment to kind of talk about the band as well too. But do you feel that Burial in the Sky still fits for what the band is? Do you say that name is still good for what you create?
Yeah, I actually do. I struggled with our name for a while because there's a lot of Burial in the blah bands. Sky Burial was taken, so Burial in the Sky was the way to go, because no one took it, which I'm still surprised by. No one took Burial in the Sky. Crazy. Neither here nor there. But it's based off of a ritual where they section the body and put it out into nature, and vultures come and pretty much pick the body clean of the loved one and take it away. And there's something super dark and also super duper beautiful about that to me. Personally. I find it absolutely beautiful. And dark only in the sense that when you you tell that to some people, that that's where the name comes from, you get like this kind of face, like,
yeah.
But in reality, to me, it's beautiful. So I think that's what it comes down to, is the perception that something's going to be really dark and nasty, and then the realization that it actually can be beautiful. I feel as though that's a good depiction of what we want to convey, which is that on the inside, that we're all beautiful. And everybody is.
Gotcha.
I know that sounds super corny and like the more you know, like, but like it really is. I think on the inside, pretty much, like, you know, there's good in everything. So I feel as though that's kind of almost what the name conveys to me.
Awesome. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the last couple minutes of this interview to kind of talk about what Burial in the Sky is going to be doing, what the next year is going to hold, simply because shows are happening again. The world is kind of opening up. Like it feels right again. Like I went to my first show in like 19 months. It was fantastic to be able to do. It was so nice to do. So talk to me a little bit about what Burial in the Sky's got going on for the next 6 months to a year.
Oh yeah. Well, we have started writing. We have some creatively funny things in the work. Actually, we have something that we're going to be shooting in October. That's going to be a little bit fun. It'll just be for some nerdy people like us. I think it'll cater to some people that I'm not sure if people will expect it, but when it comes out, I think people will either love it or at least get a really good laugh out of it, which will be cool. Like I said, we're already working on their music. As of right now, we have some other tours that we can't talk about in the works. But right now, we're going out on the road for a few days, at least, with our good pals in Hath and our new good buddies that we're going to be best friends with by the end of the road, Mythovi. We'll be playing in Philadelphia, in Maryland, and in Brooklyn. You can go on our Facebook page and check it out. It'll be October 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, if I am correct. October 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. Yep, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. And then we play again the 23rd in Philly and the 28th in Delaware. So we have a few shows in October, which isn't too bad. Outside of that, we're gonna drop a few more things as far as like guitar playthroughs and, you know, different kind of stuff for people to be able to check out, see how we're playing it and all that kind of stuff. And maybe some tablature and stuff for
nice
music that could be coming out, maybe, and a merch drop or two, which we have stuff working on. So yeah,
cool. Well, again, James, thank you so much for doing this, man. I really do love the new Burial in the Sky record. I will make sure that there's links to your Bandcamp and your social media, so whoever wants to get in touch with you absolutely can get in touch with you. It's been one of the more fun interviews I've got to do in a while, so I do really appreciate that.
Awesome.
But other than that, Clint from the Doorway 2, hanging out with James from Burial in the Sky. Thank you very much, and until next time, see you, buddy.
Yeah, much love, brother. Peace.